What is up, guys? We are back with another video, and today we're checking out Corsair's brand new case, which is their iCUE 465X. So let's go ahead and take a look. As we take a first look at the iCUE 465X, it's pretty much on par with the average size mid-tower that we're used to seeing. We received the white version, but it's also available in black as well. There are two 4mm thick tempered glass panels on this case, with the first one being on the front. Now, Corsair has done the smart thing here and has made it so the panel sits about 1.5 inches off from the front of the case. This allows airflow to come in through the sides. Behind the glass panel, you can see the showcase of this case, which are 3 included Corsair LL120 RGB fans. Each fan features 16 individually controllable RGB LEDs, and the controller is actually included with the case, which we'll get into in just a little bit. There are 4 thumb screws on the front of the case, and when you remove them, you can actually pull the entire front part of the case off. This gives you access to a removable fan filter as well as the fans themselves. Now, besides fans in the front, you can also have support for radiators up to 360 millimeters. Moving up to the top of the case, you have a few buttons and connections. There is a large power button, 2 USB 3.0 ports, a headphone and microphone combo port, and a very small reset button. The rest of the top of the case is made up of a large ventilated section, which does come with a magnetic filter pre-installed. Removing the filter, we can see that there is room for 2 120 or 140 millimeter fans, as well as radiators up to 240 millimeters. The main side panel is, of course, tempered glass, which is going to allow you to show off all of your hardware inside of your build. It's held into place by 4 thumb screws, which is fine, but we really did like the hinge door design that we saw on Corsair's Crystal Series 680X. Moving around to the back of the case, we have a pretty standard layout. There is room for a 120 millimeter exhaust fan, but it is not included. You get 7 expansion slots plus 2 vertical slots, and of course your power supply mount is at the bottom of the case. There is a small filter that comes out from the back, which of course is for your power supply. Taking the main side panel off and looking inside, you can see that we have the standard 2 compartment layout with a large power supply cover separating the 2 compartments. As far as motherboard support, this case will support motherboards up to ATX, and we had no problem getting our Asus Prime X570 Pro installed. The motherboard tray has a handful of cable routing holes, which makes routing your cables quite easy. For those wondering about clearance, you can install graphics cards up to 370 millimeters and CPU coolers as tall as 170 millimeters. The power supply cover extends the entire length of the case, but there is a cutout towards the front to accommodate water cooling hardware. There is also a cable routing hole in the power supply cover, but since it is the only hole, we did notice that things were a bit crowded with all of our header connections and our PCI Express cables. Taking the opposite side panel off the case, we can see how the rest of the case is laid out. The first thing that really caught our attention was the iCUE Lighting Node Core RGB controller. All 3 of the included LL120 RGB fans are pre-wired to this controller, which is nice because you just don't have to run the cables yourself. All you have to do is connect the controller to power via a SATA power connection, and then connect the USB 2.0 header to your motherboard. Then you'll be able to control the RGB lighting on the fans using Corsair's iCUE software. This controller supports a total of 6 fans, so if you wanted to add more Corsair RGB fans to this case, you're covered there. But keep in mind, this controller is just for RGB control. It's not for power or fan control. So you'll have to plug the fans into your motherboard or get another controller to control the power as well as speed. When it comes to storage, this case supports up to a total of 6 hard drives. We've installed 2 SSDs in the removable brackets on the back side of the motherboard tray. You can actually install 2 more towards the front of the case. They will actually mount directly onto the case itself. There is a hard drive cage in the bottom part of the case, which has 2 removable trays. Now, these trays support both 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch drives, but if you don't plan on using these trays or the cage itself, it can actually be fully removed from the case to make room for larger power supplies or just room for more cables. As far as cable management goes, we used a few of the included zip ties to organize all of our cables on the back side of the case, and there are plenty of tie down points, which makes things very easy. The 3 included RGB fans really light up the inside of this case, so much so that you really don't need an extra RGB strip unless you really want to go crazy RGB. Here's what the system looks like in a dark room. All right, guys, so at the end of the day, I think this is a great case for Corsair. It kind of brings the cost of an iCUE case down. We did see the 680X, and that is pretty expensive. This case comes in at $149.99, which if you look at it, you might think it's a little bit expensive, but the big thing with this is that you are getting the 3 LL120 RGB fans and the fan controller, and it's all wired for you. All you have to do is plug it into a header on your motherboard, install iCUE, and go ahead and, you know, change the fans and do everything like that you want to. Now, I really like that, and these fans are great. There's 16 individually controllable RGBs in each fan, so you can do a lot of really cool stuff with the fans. Now, the one thing about the controller that you have to know is that the controller is for RGB only, so you'll still need 3 fan headers on your motherboard or another fan controller to actually control speeds and of course to power those fans. But of course the big seller is the RGB fans. They look great, and that RGB controller has 3 more extra spots. So, you know, you're kind of going to be in the Corsair ecosystem, so you can go ahead and pick up 3 more fans if you want. You can, you know, link other Corsair fans, like if you had a Corsair AIO, you can go ahead and do that and plug that in there as well. You definitely want to pick up a 3rd fan because there is no exhaust fan here. So you have the 3 fans in the front, but no exhaust fan. So again, you're probably going to need to pick up at least 1 more fan here. The tempered glass panels are great. I'm still not a fan of these thumb screws. So many times, I don't know if you guys can see in this table, but I have like dents in the table. From all of these cases that come like this with these 4 thumb screws, and then you got to pull the panel off. Half the time it just falls and you scratch up your table. We have seen Corsair use hinge designs on some of their higher end models, but we don't have it here. The front, so we've seen this design before, right? We've seen a tempered glass panel here, tempered glass panel in the front, but absolutely no cooling. They do have about, I would say, like an inch of space between the front of the case and the glass panel. So you actually do get some intake and you do get some cooling that way. So that's really great to see. Internally, it is a very familiar design. 2 compartments, one up top here that has all of your components, and then your power supply and some storage down there. I do like that the cage in the bottom is removable if you wanted more space for cables or just you have a longer power supply. I also like that the SSD mounts that are on the back side of the motherboard tray, they're metal now. On the 680X, they were plastic, and that just seemed cheap to me. So good to see that they've upgraded those to metal. You can do vertical GPU here. You do have to purchase the extra accessories to do that, but you can go ahead and do that. And overall, I just think it's a really good case. There's really not much bad I could say about this, except for the fact that, again, you really need an exhaust in this case, so you'll have to buy one of those. And there only is 1 cable routing hole on the power supply cover, and with everything that we have coming out of it, it does get a little bit crowded, but that's me sort of nitpicking. But again, for $149.99 with a fan kit that basically costs $100 by itself, you are getting a really good deal, I think. And I think it's just a great mid-range case from Corsair. So if you have any questions about this case, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. We'll see you guys in the next video.